Hey Ed, hey Edie.
Hello, hello. What's going
Cool,
on?
cool. Very cool. Okay, saw the problem already.
Yeah,
Okay, let's wait for our speaker from Wormhole as well.
perfect.
Probably 2 or 3 minutes. Let me send
Oh, good.
it.
Let me know if you want help seeing them.
Sure, no problem. Should I call you Ed or Edie? Which one do you prefer?
You can call me Ed. Not too many people call me just by the letters of my name, so
Oh,
please call
okay.
me Ed.
Sure, sure. No problem. Okay, we have the decentral dev here. Okay, hi decentral dev. You on?
Hey, how's it going?
Cool, cool. Should I just call you by decentral dev or do you prefer any other name?
Dissenter Dev is good.
Sure, cool. Then let's start. Okay, we are pretty on time today. Uh, like, sure. Maybe you guys can give briefly introduction of yourself. Since today we have Ed from Pith and Decentral Dev from Wormhole on a call. We're talking about infrastructure. Uh, on the crypto on the blockchain today. So yes, maybe Ed, you can start first.
Sure, yeah, more than happy to. Hey everyone, my name is Ed, and I am a contributor to the Pith network. Pith is a financial market data oracle. That means we take market data, the prices of different assets, we send to all your favorite blockchains for your favorite DeFi applications to use. We have a really cool way of sourcing the data, which we can get into a bit later. We source the data from big household names and major financial markets players. So think market makers, global exchanges, financial services providers, names like Binance, CBOE, and Jane Street. We collect all this wonderful data, aggregate it on chain, nice and transparently, and then we submit that data through Wormhole to more than 15 different blockchains. And so far, we're used by a number of applications you may recognize, including Synthetics and Ribbon Finance and many more. So happy to be here. Thanks for this opportunity, Cetus.
Cool. Sure. Then you can continue, Decentral Dev.
Hey, I'm one of the core contributors to Wormhole. I've worked on Wormhole's relaying methodologies as well as quite a few of like the core SDKs and sort of core features of the protocol. And for those of you who don't know, Wormhole is an interoperability protocol. The version 2 of Wormhole, which is the version that everyone uses today, launched in August of 2021, along with the both messaging layer um, and the asset layer. So a lot of people have probably used Wormhole to bridge assets from one ecosystem to another, and currently Wormhole supports I think 23, 24 blockchains across 7 virtual machines, and is very interested in sort of creating this next generation of decentralized apps which are inherently operate across multiple blockchains.
Cool. Thanks, Decentral Dev and Ed. And I would do a brief introduction of Cetus as well. So Cetus is a DEX and concentrated liquidity protocol focusing on the move-based ecosystem like Sweet and Aptos. And our main mechanism is the concentrated liquidity market making mechanism, which is pretty different from other AMM model on the ecosystem. And so this is for people who are not really familiar with us, probably audience from the Pith and the Wormhole community. And then I will then invite Ed and Decentral Dev to the stage to have some question discussion here. So since you guys all know, Pith and Wormhole are one of the leading cross-chain bridges and also the oracles in the crypto world, and they are also the one of and also the cross-chain bridges and the oracles are the most important fundamental infrastructure in the ecosystem. So more like most users already know about the basic functions that we can use on these platforms, but maybe could you guys explain it in a more professional perspective that why the bridge and the oracle is so important to the current Web3 market? or in the ecosystem?
Yeah, definitely. I'll speak on behalf of Oracles. And you said a professional perspective, so I'll try my best to keep it professional. I'm just kidding. So yeah, with oracles, oracles are critical infrastructure because when you think about blockchains, they are distributed ledgers and they're amazing pieces of technology. But the blockchain is kind of, I suppose, dumb in the sense that it can't really read the real world, right? If you want blockchains to perform sophisticated financial services, you need them to be able to know and track the prices of real world assets out there, as well as many other live information regarding the real world. And the question then becomes, how do we bring that data to the blockchain in a way that doesn't compromise on the principles of decentralization and trustlessness? That essentially is the Oracle problem. And many oracles have found their own ways of trying to solve for this. And with Pith, we solve for it by creating this network where, on the one side, as I described, we have all these, sources of data, first-party sources of data, people who own and create these prices because they actively participate in price discovery. But to make sure that they're incentivized and behave in a way uh, uh, that allows for a trustless Oracle solution, we incentivize them accordingly. Where if they do a good job of submitting data, and the calculation for this is done on chain, then they will be rewarded accordingly. And if they do a bad job, they'll be penalized. The data that is then aggregated on chain to remove any bad outliers. And it's not just us; any Oracle will do this. And at the end of the day, we will want asset prices that are truly reflective of what's going on in the markets, or perhaps across the markets, is a better way to put it. And then through Wormhole, being a bridge and a generic message passing protocol, we were able to send this amazing price data to 15 plus target chains for public consumption across all these different ecosystems. So I think this case study alone really illustrates the importance of something as fundamental as an Oracle. We're used by, we're important for borrow lending protocols who need to keep track of the collateral and the health of their users' positions. We're very much necessary for perpetual trading in determination of funding rates. And we're also critical for different DEXs who perhaps need to track different underlyings, algorithmic stablecoins. The list goes on and on. Without oracles, it's really hard to imagine how we can, create a robust DeFi ecosystem without relying on extremely, technologically difficult facilities like order books, perhaps, and AMMs alone. So yeah, that's my quick and short answer for why oracles are important.
Sure, thanks, Edie. Definitely, Oracle is the fundamental project in all the ecosystems, and maybe Decentradev, you can explain more about Wormhole. Yeah, it's pretty obvious from the cross-chain bridge category, but maybe explain more from a technical way.
Yeah, sure. So I think for anyone who's used a bridge today, bridging is mostly about tokens, and it's mostly a mess, right? Like it's mostly a matter of basic compatibility, where you have a dozen different wallets and a dozen different blockchains, and there's you know all sorts of assets that aren't compatible with each other, and just all sorts of messiness in the space. So that's kind of like one of the problems that bridging is attempting to solve today, is just sort of solve some of these basic compatibility challenges. But increasingly, for those of the industry who are trying to see the writing on the wall, we generally more talk about the term interoperability and like arbitrary message passing and all these sort of things, because when you like boil down to it, if you can pass arbitrary data, that's kind of much superior to just being able to transfer tokens, and a more generalized approach to the problem. So there are sort of like if you view interoperability as more of this sort of networking for blockchains style of problem, then you kind of have to go out and solve different problems from the get go, like untrusted counterparty settlement, but also just a lot of distributed systems style of problems around consistency and availability. So really, I think one of the core bets of Wormhole is that once these sort of basic compatibility token style problems are solved, that the real unlock is going to be more in these decentralized computing primitives and the next generation of applications and blockchains that people build once that future is available. So I think in the same way that smart contracts kind of led to the innovations and landscape that we see today, that this sort of next generation where decentralized computing becomes distributed will unlock that sort of next generation of possibilities.
Cool. And just a few words to add on. So maybe our Cetus user has already seen the wormhole on our dApp front end, and for maybe it's really convenient for those for those newbies who come from other ecosystems who have assets on other ecosystem and trying to transfer. So through wormhole, you can easily transfer your assets to Move, and then try the service of Cetus. Yeah, sure. And then we already know the background of wormhole and Pith just now, but we have a really important question. Like we have a lot of oracles and a lot of cross-chain bridges in the whole ecosystem, but what factors make your product to become the market leader, or how does it differ from other competitors?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, the 1 million stablecoin question. So happy to give a quick answer, and I can dive into any of these features if this interests people. I'm sure there's a lot of developers listening in on this panel as well. So on the Pyth side, with the powers of Wormhole and our app chain called PythNet, we are able to do some very, very amazing stuff. Um, First, right off the bat, we have the most extensive coverage among oracles. We have 200 plus price feeds that are all equally available across all 15 blockchains at once. So if you think about, the sort of a legacy Oracle model, they have to sort of spin up a price feed one by one on every chain. But the cool thing with Pyth is we have this app chain called PythNet, which is based on the Solana technology, but which is ultimately independent. PythNet is cool because it allows us to update prices every 400 milliseconds. So you get super granular, super extremely accurate prices, which means more robust and secure operations for downstream data users. We aggregate data from all these amazing data sources that I mentioned, right? Names like Street or Two Sigma or IMC, and many more. And you have this highly accurate data that is super reflective of the market. We aggregate it on PythNet, and then through Wormhole, we can send it to be available on all these different blockchains. So you don't need to imagine you're like a layer one foundation, for example, or a protocol with your own, token. And let's say you finally get your own ecosystem or your own protocol token spun up with Pyth. Congratulations. That's a big thing to celebrate. Well, the cool thing about Pyth is that let's say you're on Arbitrum, right? You're starting on Arbitrum and you spin up this Pyth price feed for your own token. All of a sudden, this price feed is now instantly available on BNB chain, on Solana, on Aptos, on Ethereum, on Optimism, on so many other blockchains instantly. That's great news if you have plans to go multi-chain, or if you want to make sure that exposure to your ecosystem or your protocol is, broadly distributed across the wider DeFi world, and that's awesome. This is with the powers of PythNet and Wormhole, we are able to become this super scalable Oracle solution. And on top of that, we have a bunch of small features that really make the data differentiated from others. So not only is the data extremely fast and accurate, we we have gone with a different model in terms of distributing the data. So instead of streaming the data or basically pushing the data constantly on chain and having someone foot the bill, which is what legacy oracles do, we have a pull model. So if you're using Pyth data, you can watch, the prices update in real time or almost very close to real time on PythNet. But then whenever you need that data point, you can make a request kind of to the Wormhole contract to pull that data from PythNet to Wormhole to your destination chain. And that data point becomes public for everyone, including you, to consume. This saves massively on gas fees because you get the benefits of knowing what the price is at all times, but you only pay the gas fees for the prices when on demand or when needed. So now there's no one who's responsible for like footing a huge gas bill or basically the streaming of prices where not every on-chain price push is even being used. So the gas efficiency is a really cool aspect about this as well. And I guess the last feature I'll kind of touch on real quick is we not only give you the prices of different assets, we also tell you a confidence interval. So the confidence is basically like a band. We tell you that Bitcoin is, let's say, $30,000 plus minus maybe $50. That plus minus is the confidence. This is something we require every data provider to calculate based on if you're an exchange, you can use your bid ask spread, for example. But basically, we're saying to them, you need to tell us like the estimation uncertainty as well. We therefore give everyone the aggregate price and the aggregate price uncertainty. And this is really, really powerful because when things are going crazy in markets and different, exchanges and trading venues and traders start diverging, that divergence is really important information, especially when you have things like the Luna death crisis, for example, or when Luna's undergoing its death spiral. Pith was not only able to track that down to like the smallest tick, but we also have confidence intervals widening extremely, going extremely wide. So everyone downstream, whether you're a lending protocol or a trading platform, you receive this information saying, hey, look, the price of Luna is like super uncertain. There's a lot of disagreements about the markets. That is really valuable because then you can have on-chain logic to perform different safety checks and to respond accordingly so that you can protect both your users and your funds. So, I described a number of things, but safer, faster, cheaper. That's kind of what Pith is bringing with the powers of our friends here at Wormhole. So before I forget, to Centro Dev, thank you guys for what you're doing.
Thanks, Ed. I'm gonna add on more questions to the part that you just introduced, but I will leave it to Decentraland first, talking about the competitive advantages and how Wormhole become the market leader in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just talking about bridging, like most people think about, moving tokens from point A to B. And that's really, a nice thing to do. That's an important part of bridging that people will want to accomplish. But I think, Ed has just, raised a bunch of good points. That's like, what if you bridged Oracle data, instead? And that's really been like a core focus of Wormhole from the beginning, is that it's really about interoperability and the power of utilizing heterogeneous ecosystems for specialized use cases and also zero knowledge. So while there's a lot of value to be had in these sort of like bridging tokens and basic compatibility sort of problems, the true unlock comes when interoperability begins to expand the power of blockchain and decentralized computing as a whole. And so, Wormhole's key kind of thing that it does relative to, other bridges and other sort of platforms is try to think about these as from a first principles computing and distributed systems style of problem rather than, token bridging or something like that. So really what I'm most excited for to sort of see realized from the Wormhole platform is really what people do with it and the sort of like layer ones and decentralized applications that can exist once Wormhole, well, really now that Wormhole has opened this door to, hey, what if you just operated at the level of all the blockchains rather than necessarily a single blockchain? I think really that this will allow people to change the programming paradigms that they utilize when creating decentralized applications in a way that they can program much more like a modern operating system where you sort of have lots of specialized components driven by, individual drivers rather than like one big mainframe computer that runs on some esoteric programming language like COBOL or Solidity. Um, so, in that regard, I don't think that the state is particularly far off because the most sophisticated decentralized apps right now are doing things like using Aptos or Solana for high throughput computation, but then settling on Ethereum while they jam something in Arweave to just like have it be their big bad decentralized data storage solution. So I think these like decentralized applications are being built today, and a couple of years from now we're going to be using and talking about these things as being the state of the landscape. And those things are really being built right now.
Yeah, and like you said, I think at this moment, the multi-chain trend is pretty popular and pretty common in the crypto world, and then users are not really satisfied with only bridging their tokens, and maybe they probably tend to pursue the cross-chain interoperability and maybe some more advanced transactions to be executed across different chains. So, what kind of effort does Wompo making right now to make this kind of thing happen?
Yeah, so a lot of things right now, the biggest unfortunate aspect of this, of sort of the current landscape, is that end users even need to think about this in the first place. So really, like, in the same way that in Web 2, you never think about, like, oh, am I switching internet service providers when I talk to that server over there that's a Facebook server? Like, no one thinks about such things because all of those sort of networking and interoperability problems have been solved in the sort of greater Web 2, Web 1 style of world. So I think over the next couple of years, what we'll just see is that, like, no one talks about bridging anymore. The only people who deal with bridging are, the engineers who have specialized in that. If you're an end user who just has, some wallet and wants to go get 100% APR in some pool somewhere, certainly you won't be concerned about what bridges you're going through and that sort of stuff. And a lot of that just comes with the maturity of the ecosystem. So there are a lot of components that we can kind of like get into a little later that Wormhole's working on that will help developers create this very seamless experience for end users. And a lot of it just comes down to, developers writing the code at some point.
Understood, understood. Another add-on to the central dev. Yes, we've pretty know that the circle is going to do the CCTP, and we saw that Wormhole has already get onto it, start like getting prepared for it. And what kind of impact do you think it would make on a cross-chain ecosystem in the future?
Yeah, awesome. So I think with like the Circle CCTP vision as a whole, I think the first thing to kind of acknowledge from this is just that, like, I don't think ERC20s were ever going to be the be all end all representation of a decentralized asset. And I think that this is kind of a step forward towards realizing that, like, hey, maybe we need some more robust token standards that can deal with multiple consensus mechanisms, multiple token standards, multiple you know custody solutions, whatever. So I think that Wormhole really worked closely with Circle to ensure that the CCTP protocol would function in a conducive manner to what the forefront of interoperability uh, is doing and is thinking. So CCTP uses a very similar notary relayer model to the one used by Wormhole, and this is done intentionally and by design so that it could work well in conjunction with the generic messaging primitives of Wormhole. So
Sure. Yeah, please.
yeah, so I just think that while CCTP is squarely focused on tokens in USDC, I think it's also very indicative of where the industry is going. In that, like, Circle is rethinking sort of like how they do custody, how they do bridging, and all those sort of things. And I think it's really just an indicator that an indicator towards where everything is going, and blockchains as worldwide computing networks rather than just like big computers that deal with token transfers.
It sounds like it's giving a really positive impact, right? And will it affect the current market share of cross chains?
So I mean, like, I think CCTP is going to, be the way you do USDC, and I think like USDC is obviously a very important asset in the greater ecosystem. From the perspective of, like, there's a ton of data out there that should be represented as like decentralized data on blockchains, and most of that is not USDC tokens. So from that perspective, no, I think the market's just getting huger and huger. And I don't think, USDC coming in and saying, hey, we want to handle this one asset, in the way that, as a centralized issuer makes the most sense to us. Um, I think that it's very positive for the industry. That's like, hey, this is inevitable, and we need to move in this sort of way of thinking about blockchains. So I think it's an indicator that, like, nobody's going to get cut out here. It's early days, and the pie is going to get much bigger.
Understood, understood. Yeah, we have a lot of other assets as well. It just helps the whole ecosystem grows. Maybe back to that, we have some question about the Oracle. Uh, so for the Oracle, it's like one of the most concerns of our users nowadays, probably the price manipulations. Maybe just want to ask if a price feed is tempered or manipulated by a party, even for a few minutes or seconds. um, I think it would be a disaster for those apps and programs that's already integrated with those price feeds. So, would there be any dedicated mechanism that's made by PIS to avoid this kind of risk?
Yeah, I'm glad you're addressing this question. Security is like the number one focus, and we deal with it a lot. Actually, we describe this a lot, even in our first white paper too. This is also what makes homebrewing your own Oracle extremely difficult. So the question becomes, you want these price feeds to be both trustless, but the trustless aspect implies that you don't have people tampering with it. How do we make this possible at Pith? So there's uh, a few layers here. One layer is that when it comes to any price feed, we don't take the price feed from one or even just a small number of data providers. There's a reason we do the aggregation, and there's a reason we do the aggregation on chain. So for any price feed on Pith network, we have currently up to 35 data providers who can be submitting live prices for that product. And by product, I just mean pair, as in like BTC USD, the price feed, for example. Now, we have a minimum number of publisher rule as well, both to ensure that there's liveness, as well as to make sure that you can't have a minority of data providers trying to conspire in order to change the price feed. And we have a sophisticated aggregation logic for this that takes the median based on multiple votes, the votes being different data points price points being submitted by all of the data providers on top of votes for different confidence intervals. And the idea is you would need more than like what you would call an earth mover force to uh, manipulate the price accordingly. It just becomes statistically virtually impossible. But we put a lot of thought into it, and for any price feed that we spin up, there's a very thorough conformance testing, uh, both to make sure that the price feed is robust, as well as and we do this for every data provider who elects to provide for that price feed. So it's a very thorough testing. Um, very a lot of aggregation logic that's been thought through to make sure that we don't have people playing around with the output aggregate. Not only that, but the aggregate, like, because the aggregation happens on chain, you can trace the provenance of every data point from input all the way to output. That's a very specific choice we've made, as opposed to doing off-chain aggregation or off-chain reporting as some legacy oracles do. So that's something that was also a conscious design choice. It's also worth noting that given the nature of our first party data providers, these are people who have reputations on the line and have you know very very important businesses, usually not even in crypto or DeFi to begin with. And it'd be very remiss for them to try and manipulate a price feed for a small gain and then suffer like catastrophic reputational damage to their general industry just because they try to do that one exploit. So those are kind of the layers in place that makes price feeds robust on the Pyth side. And I hope that explanation was clear.
Understood. That definitely secures the secures the protocols. And apart from the security side, also wonder about the asset price feed as well. So, does PIS has any plan to expand the asset category of your price feed?
Oh yeah, totally. So right now we offer price feeds for cryptocurrencies, of course, forex pairs. Um, so like Canadian dollar and euro and all that stuff. We offer the prices of commodities, namely the prices of metals like gold and silver, and we also do uh, U.S. equities, which is super interesting because that's the kind of data that you can't get elsewhere unless you go to Bloomberg or CME or another major exchange and pay through the nose for their API. So the fact that we're able to make this kind of data live and available and free is a real testament to how disruptive the Pith model is, both for Web3 but also for big data or the financial data industry in general. And some of you might, for those who are wondering, well, can I get US equity data from like Yahoo or Google? Yes, you can, but by law, that kind of data is delayed by 15 or more minutes. If you want the live actual US equities data, if you want like the edge in trading in that regard, you probably have to pay for a Bloomberg or Refinitiv terminal. Now, in terms of new price feeds that are coming to Pith, we have a lot of exciting stuff coming down the line. I'll share a bit of alpha with this group. So US Treasury rates are something we're looking very closely at. We're looking at more commodities, including energy. We're looking at futures, and that will require a different methodology, but we are confident we can get it. A lot of people ask for agricultural commodities, which is quite interesting. So if you trade on the CME, for example, you might have traded things like milk class 3 or lean hogs or wheat or soybean, right? A lot of real world assets in general. I think that's kind of a new trend that's reemerging in 2023. That was a topic that was pretty hot in 2017, but people are kind of refocusing on, I suppose, that real world utility for crypto and making a big use case out of it, improving the use case for DeFi. So we're very excited to be leading the charge on that front, and yeah, getting all these exciting feeds to everyone, hopefully very soon.
Cool. Then you guys did a lot of things off chain as well for the communities and forex. Yeah, and maybe then let's turn the topic back to the Move ecosystem. We all know that both Wormhole and the Pith has made a lot of contributions in the Move ecosystem. So could you share some information to us about probably most our community members are based in Move ecosystem, especially the members from Cetus. So I would like to know like how do you guys contribute on the Move ecosystem on both three or Aptos?
Yeah, Desandra, do you want to take this first?
Sure. So, I think Move is kind of one of the most exciting things happening in the blockchain space. It's a great language. It's also, you know, still quite new. So I'm excited to really see where the community goes and kind of does with it as it becomes more mature. Not going to necessarily hazard a guess to what the next killer app is going to be that sort of like comes out of the Aptos or the blockchain space as a whole, um, but certainly the everything going on in Aptos and Sui and with the Move language kind of being designed from the ground up for blockchain computing in the first place, it feels like one of the most innovative things, and I'm just excited to see what people more clever than myself are going to be able to do with it. From sort of the get go, Wormhole has been focused on making sure that it's going to be interoperable, right? And so back when Wormhole first launched and was designing its primitives and all those sort of things like Aptos and Sui and Move hadn't really entered the space or even been announced yet. But Wormhole's been able to, very cleanly and smoothly expand to both the Move and Sui ecosystems. And Aptos was supported on day one, and Sui is planned to be supported on day one as well. So I think we've only really even begun to see what sort of these, just like the sort of applications you can build on these dramatically stronger computing environments than EVM. And it just feels to me like we've, unlocked an order of magnitude or two of just raw computing power and how many computer cycles you can do in a single blockchain transaction, with a lot of these like new, more powerful ecosystems, including Aptos, Sui, but also including things happening in the Cosmos ecosystem and Solana, and even in places like Algorand. So all of these like most cutting edge projects, I think, are actually the place where you're going to see the exciting sort of next market cycle style of innovations come from. And a lot of it is just because they are working with fundamentally stronger tools than everybody else.
Yeah, we share a similar vision, and perhaps even mandate on the Pith side. So, we try to expand where there's both the demand as well as the technological promise. So we're also very excited for Move, and we this is something that we see, people taking inspiration from the early Solana days on how to build an ecosystem and how to, build a DeFi ecosystem too. On top of that, uh, we're sponsoring, we've been sponsoring a lot of hackathons and community events throughout the Move ecosystem. Currently with a focus on Aptos. That's been, very fun. Very great to see, working with a lot of teams like Econia and Ferrum and Tala Labs and many more. And we're working very hard on Sui, and we're very very excited for the eventual Sui launch. We're working with many teams in that ecosystem too, and making sure that we kind of know what they need in order to get set up in terms of price feeds. Right now, we are deployed on Aptos, working with the foundation in terms of making the on well, yeah, the integration experience even smoother. Very very excited.
Cool, understood. And probably wanna just wondering, apart from yourself, what do you think about the infrastructure in the movie ecosystem as a whole? Like, how's the progress of it? What do you think?
I mean, for me personally, I've always been well. Okay, I'm going to speak from my personal experiences within the Aptos ecosystem, just to illustrate. But I think one of the underrated elements of DeFi is composability, right? People tend to focus on things like immutability or censorship resistance, and those are important. Those are all important, but you know, composability is what's going to make the big difference between a Web3 or DeFi and let's just say CeFi or TradFi. Within Aptos, what's personally excited me is, that you clearly have a push in DeFi that's trying to build not only on the obvious primitives of, a bridge and an oracle, but also an order book. So that's why we are fans of things like Ferrum or Econia, or Ox before they had retired, because an order book is something that you can almost call it like the holy grail of DeFi, right? And it's quite interesting because in the early days, people building within DeFi wanted to build things like an order book, but limited throughput at the time, especially for Ethereum, had kind of caused people to think about other ways of setting up a trade execution model. That's kind of why Vitalik, I think, was on a Reddit thread or something. That's when he came up with the idea of an AMM, and we sort of take AMMs for granted throughout DeFi. But order books are very exciting because they are extremely, they are the go-to model throughout the entire TradFi and CeFi world. Uh, and to have that possibility be brought on chain with the effects of composability, this is something we saw in like early projects like Serum on Solana back in the day. But it makes me equally excited to see ecosystems like Aptos and more, take that on. So that's kind of my little tidbit from an architectural commentary.
Yeah, it was pretty popular on Solana, the audiobook model. But maybe just one more question from both Ed as well, Ed and Decentradev as well. So, since we've talked about audiobook, how about other infrastructure products? Anything specifically you think in the ecosystem should need to be improved, or like anything we is not in the ecosystem yet, but we kind of need that apart
Yeah,
from.
for me,
Mhm.
a
Yeah, please.
universal kind of challenge is always about like no matter where you are, if you're on chain, then the universal challenge is on ramping, right? You can build a great wallet experience, you can build like a great AMM, CLMM, even an order book and all that stuff. But if people can't smoothly transition from Web2 finance into using DeFi, then it just, automatically you have like this almost insurmountable friction, right? And perhaps this becomes more of a regulatory kind of question, and perhaps it becomes more of a question of bridging the worlds of Web 2 and Web 3, as opposed to one of like what is Web 3 missing in and of itself. So I'm looking forward to people who see the promise in the Move ecosystem and try very hard to make sure that on ramping is as seamless smooth but also safe and secure process for everyone, because otherwise the growth is just completely stilted from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all looking for that kind of yeah, projects and people showing up in the Move ecosystem. And how about you, Decentradev? How about your thoughts on the like the current status of infrastructure building in the Move ecosystem, and also any improvements that we need to looking for at the moment?
So I think definitely a large part of why we are where we are in the ecosystem is because of the tools that we've had to work with. So kind of the start of the modern decentralized computing boom was Bitcoin, and everyone knows that like transferring Bitcoin takes like 40 or 50 minutes to get a sufficient level of finality. Ethereum's a little better, but it's still like, finality on Ethereum is like 15 minutes nowadays. So, I think that was great for financial applications where everyone was already waiting multiple days and, getting rugged by banks going under. But, in other segments of sort of the Web 2 industry where blockchain is worse, not better, I'm excited for sort of like how today's platforms that can avoid Bitcoin and avoid uh, Ethereum layer one can circumvent sort of some of these problems. So I'm really interested to see like when it becomes Web 3 instead of DeFi, and so I think there's some awesome stuff happening in like the NFT space in like a creative way to just do something that's not really decentralized finance, but is still like a cool application that obviously millions of people care about. Sort of things like decentralized gaming are also really interesting to me, because I just don't think that they were very feasible up until like a year or two ago. And now that you have platforms like Aptos and which are fast and can actually like get a thing done in 1 second rather than in minutes. I think that that's one of the key things that these Web 2 style of experiences won't have to denigrate their experiences to put them on chain, and I think that that will be a large source of sort of on ramping and things like that would simply just be because going onto the blockchain will hopefully not have to any longer be a thing which makes your experience worse rather than better.
Exactly. I also heard some words saying that people in Web3 all have like high level of tolerance while using the Web3 application. Since yeah, they got the smooth experience on the Web3 applications, get used to it, and when they get into Web3, for those either like DeFi or gaming or whatever, they're using it, and there's some errors happening on the chat section. They'll say, it's like Web3, we can wait. It's gonna be some problems. It's still like there are gonna be some new updates and it will get better. But yeah, we are achieving for like a higher level of the protocol, and we aiming for like the smooth experience and better experience, just like Web 2. Yeah, and just to we have one last question for our speakers, but if anyone wants to raise any questions, feel free to drop in a comment and maybe raise your hands. I will leave you to the stage after one last question. And yeah, so we've been talking about the security stuff and the cross chain, also about the updates in the Move ecosystem. How about like any updates from both of you guys apart from the Move ecosystem things? We have a lot of developers here, and maybe some members from other ecosystem would like to hear some updates from you guys.
Yeah, sure. So, all your favorite Pyth data is going to be available in all your favorite ZK worlds. So, we're looking at ZK EVM, we're looking at ZK Sync, we're looking at a lot more. Pyth data is going to be, available in those chains. The I suppose expansion strategy and roadmap for Pyth is pretty straightforward and almost elegant. It's just more chains, more asset classes, more everything. Uh, so yeah, definitely look forward to that. And just a general expansion of more asset types supported, depending on whatever you're building, whatever you need. You let us know, and we'll make sure to make it happen.
How about Wormhole?
Yeah, so there's always a bajillion things going on in the wormhole ecosystem. So wormhole is always adding new chains. So I'd keep an eye out just for that continual pipeline of new chains being onboarded. But aside from that, one of the key efforts is just to have a push for new tooling to just make the ergonomics better for these developments, for developing in this way, where Wormhole has had the primitives for quite a while, but it's still relatively difficult, and the ergonomics are difficult in that we want developers to develop on all of the blockchains rather than develop on one blockchain several times. So I think the ergonomics surrounding this style of development are going to get a lot better. There's a lot of new like front ends, widgets, SDKs, and like those sort of developments coming along that will help make more seamless these like any token anywhere to any other token anywhere else style of bridging experience. In particular, Wormhole Connect is slated to go live in the next few weeks or so, and that's a widget and SDK for developers, which can reduce bridging friction to help onboard users and kind of deal with all of the frictions associated with that. So over the course of the next year, I'm really hoping that bridges will kind of stop being a thing which end users need to think about and just become a process which silently happens in the back end instead. Another big push is relaying. I think relaying is really just a weak point across the entire industry, and I don't think anyone's really nailed it as of yet. So one of the key things Wormhole is working on is developing a decentralized relaying network with proper incentive structures, which will hopefully move just this entire segment of the industry just like a significant step forward in creating that sort of base layer of infrastructure for people to work with. Also, Wormhole is always concerned with the transition to zero knowledge. A lot of work has been being done on zero knowledge and also message aggregation. And we really view ZK as being the holy grail of bridging and interoperability. So Wormhole has been designed from day one to be amenable to the architecture that would be used by a zero knowledge interoperability protocol. So the idea has kind of been that you could integrate now and over the as the zero knowledge technology kind of matures and becomes usable, then you would be able to silently swap out the underlying proof mechanisms without impacting integrators. So I think 2023 is going to be the year where you start to see some of these zero knowledge primitives make their way into the protocol as well.
Cool. Thanks for the info and updates. And maybe just leave one last thing to something to be discussed between us. So I would like to know if you maybe want to ask some advice or suggestion on your concern about crypto or about Move ecosystem to our newbies and maybe the users from other ecosystem, like for them to start on the Move ecosystem. Like any personal advice could work as well.
Yeah, so I think that the kind of the advice that I'd give to everybody, I think is very applicable to people who are working in Move or Sui, in Sui or in Aptos, or just concerned with the Move language as a whole, is to sort of have a broad view of the industry and what everyone else is doing. I think a lot of people end up reinventing the wheel, where I think now we have a lot of good things strewn across the ecosystem, and a lot of the most cutting edge things, and sort of the things that I really want people to be working on are, instead of reinventing the wheel, taking the wheels, creating an axle, and stringing it together into a car. I just kind of recommend that people be cognizant of the tools they're working with and what other tools exist kind of like just beyond the horizon.
Yeah, that's great advice. You definitely don't want to be in the position where like people see you as like a imitator or copycat. And let's say you do find, your niche or your competitive advantages, and hopefully you find ways to make them sustainable too. Uh, Whatever you do, like do it well and do it clearly and communicate it clearly. I know too many teams who are extremely talented and they produce amazing stuff, but they either fail to properly communicate what they are, so they don't build the appropriate traction early on, and they sort of get like forgotten despite creating things that are better than even their louder competitors. But on top of that, you want to make sure that you remain agile. You capture excuse me, all the whatever demand there is, and that you're reactive. Uh, you don't want to, be stuck in like a spiral where you're just building out some vertical that has no proven traction or proven use case, and then you kind of fall by the wayside. You don't make a lot of noise, and then people assume your project is even abandoned or dead, right? You always want to avoid that, and it becomes hard, especially when you're a small team with limited networking networks or knowledge at the beginning. But uh, you kind of have to do all that stuff at once. You want to be built. You want to be heads down in building, but you want to make sure people know what you're working on and they know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. That stuff compounds over time and goes very, very far.
Yeah, agree with that. Build your competitive advantage and let people users know what you are doing and how you dominate it in the market would be a very important thing to start building in like either ecosystem. Yeah, and then that's pretty much about the infrastructure AMN today, and we've talked about a lot of information from Wormhole and Fizz, how they're doing the updates. And also what they're gonna working on in the coming year. So yes, if you are a last minute joiner who didn't listen the previous part of the AMA, we will release and recap probably next week in a few days. To you can see the whole content of our AMA today. And really thanks Ed and the Central Dev to joining our AMA today. Yeah, great to have you. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks for this opportunity. We appreciate it.
Yep, it's really nice to talk to you guys.
Yep. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, cheers. Have a good day, and have a good day, all the audience. Thanks for your
You
time as
too.
well.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Cheers. Bye bye.